Howdy folks, Monty here in Las Vegas, Nevada. So if you go back on this channel, you will see me actually unboxing these when I first got them. But there's something particularly special about the Squat Army. You see, how do I begin this story? Well, when I was probably 13 or 14, I belonged to, well, I didn't really belong. I paid money occasionally to go to something called the Canberra Games Society. Canberra, Australia is normally where I'm from. The squat groupie is a favourite of mine. Just absolutely amusing beyond all belief. Where's the squat living ancestor? Is he here? No. Anyway, so I went to the Canberra Games Society probably half a dozen times. The main thing I remember about that was the kind of aggressive nature of some of the participants there. They just weren't very well behaved, and the older they were, the less well behaved they were. So I was dealing with adults that were not particularly well behaved. Anyway, so I did a lot of odd jobs. I mowed lawns and I did a bunch of stuff to make money, and so I had a little bit of money spared, but I wanted to buy an army, and the only army that I could afford at the Canberra Games Society was a squat army, and it was a squat army that had not won any number of games. It was a very poorly organised squat army. It did have a large contingent of bikes, which made it somewhat fun to play, but anyway, so I got the squat army, had the squat army from about, I don't know what the date was, would have been, when would it have been, 93 maybe, 93, anyway. So I had the squat army, and then a few years later, I'd already kind of fallen out with the Canberra Games Society and just the game in general, and Warhammer in general, and Warhammer 40k in general. And the squat army, I did actually battle an Imperial Guard army once, and a Gene Stealer army, and the Gene Stealer army just ate through the squat army. Now this squat army that I have here is not representative of the squat army I had in Canberra, Australia at all. It's more a spiritual replacement, let's just call it that. So, oh wow, I wasn't anticipating these guys being in there. Ah, very good. Well, this is fascinating. So this means I need to get another case for these. Wasn't anticipating that at all. So anyway, these are, I first got prototypes of these made by Fred Reed. They are, what are they? They're blood letters with wings on them. And I think maybe these are the authentic things with the wings on them. I don't know. They might be blood letters with wings on them, but I got Fred Reed to make me blood letters once with wings on them. They look very similar, but they're probably more likely harpies. Anyway, you probably know on the channel exactly what they are. And my recollection is there are probably some bikes in here, which is exactly what they are. So we got 1, 2, 3 bikes, or trikes, more importantly. So the one I had in Canberra, Australia, had a lot more stuff going on. It actually had a guy on the back of the weapons trike. Anyway, so stopped an interest in Games Workshop related stuff, and generally kind of broke away from the whole thing when I was about 17, 18. And when I was 17. And when I was 16, 17, I dated this girl for, I don't know, a couple of years. Well, it felt like I was dating her, but it turns out I wasn't dating her at all, which is another ironic story. Anyway, she was Jewish, and the plan was to move to Israel with her for university. And I got into Technion, which is a university in Israel, and I was going to go and live in Israel. So when I came to what was I going to do with my squat army and a bunch of my related role-playing stuff, I basically decided that it was smart for me to give them to her brother, because that's what you do. You give your possessions to someone who you think is, well, anyway, you give them to the brother. And I haven't even started about the Fidel Castro Squat, which was the whole reason I started doing this thing, just to talk about the Fidel Castro Squat. Anyway, so turns out the school wasn't being particularly honest with me, and basically the miniatures disappeared, and her brother looked me up on the internet a couple of times and never actually contacted me, so I never contacted him in order to get the squats back. So I saw a guy on eBay selling a bunch of squats unpainted, probably 4 years ago now. Did the old Dettol bath, and then sent the remainder to Oscar Lars, well, sent all of them to Oscar Lars to have painted, which is what you see here. This is a in memoriam to the squat army that I had in whatever, 1992, 1993, up until when I gave it to this woman's brother, never to be seen again. So another important thing was when I first got interested in squats, it was the Fidel Castro squat in particular, who you may or may not know. Now, I actually put this out in a podcast probably, I don't know, 6, maybe 10 years ago. And one of the viewers to this channel sent me, I think, 4 Fidel Castro squats, exactly the same figure. And I don't know what happened to them, but I contacted Rochi Rochford in Yorkshire, and he said, yes, I have one of them. So I said, okay, well, let's see if you can paint it and send it back to me, and I'll work out the commission and we'll work out all that stuff. So I spelled squat wrong here too for some unknown reason. Who knows? The Fidel Castro squat was the first squat that I ever bought and owned, and it was completely separate from the army. But it's just such an iconic figure. When Fidel Castro himself died, I posted a photo of the Fidel Castro squat. But just through the nature of what's happened to my lead pile, I didn't know what had happened to the Fidel Castro squats. I know that they'd gone out to people, but they'd just never been returned painted. Confirmed that with Rochi, and we'll be getting a Fidel Castro squat painted by him sent back. So one of the 4. And for the gentleman who sent me the squats initially, apologies. This has just been the chaos of my life to date. Anyway, Tom Barlow in Las Vegas, Nevada, signing out.